Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Gold Coast Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Winegard, and today we have another awesome entrepreneur, business owner, very experienced in the property management space. He's actually been in property management since 1998, and he's owned and managed real estate in 3 markets: Minneapolis. Bet you're glad you're not there anymore.
Yeah.
Well, at least right now, right? Phoenix, and most recently West Palm Beach. He's a real estate broker with a specific emphasis on property management and a niche market focus of managing condos owned by real estate investors. He's also an investor himself, a hard money lender, and a fix and hold expert. He's dabbled in or done almost every aspect of real estate, and he loves the industry. Now, he's currently focused on management in Palm Beach County, and he's married with 3 girls, ages 6 to 13, and he's heavily devoted to family time. Harlan Miller, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice chatting with you a little bit before this.
Absolutely.
So tell me, let's dig into the business a little bit. Like you do property management for investors typically. Who's the typical investor that you work with?
Generally, most of my investors are mom and pop. So, going back in time, they were the individuals that wanted to enhance their income for either retirement, maybe college fund, or, sometimes even like I have 3 daughters for their future weddings. So they saved up some money. They saw an opportunity. Somebody marketed them a property, and, they wanted to live the American dream, which comes with, investing in something. So that's the majority.
I thought what you said before the show was a little interesting. You threw me a stat saying that 51% of homeowners are mom and pop, and I think there is a perception out there that BlackRock and hedge funds or whoever it may be are buying up all of this real estate, and that's actually not the case, right?
No, in fact, that's really a recent phenomenon. If you go back probably even less than a decade, that number probably was closer to 70% of mom and pops. So the majority of our country is owned by mom and pops that own 1, maybe 2 rental properties, and they're just average, families just trying to make a little extra money. So.
You know what I heard? I don't know if you heard Trump say this the other day, but he was talking about the affordability issue that we have in this country, right? And we do. We absolutely do. I train and manage, 22, 23-year-olds.
Yeah.
And, my pitch to them is, yeah, you guys probably do have it a little harder than me. So you do have to be more exceptional at an early age to really kind of make it financially. It's just the truth. But Trump said something very interesting, and nobody has said this position. I'd be curious to kind of hear your take on it. He goes, listen, I could crush the real estate industry just like that and make homes much more affordable, knock it down 30 to 40%. He goes, but for every person that can't afford a home, he said that there's somebody who purchased that home for $200,000 and it's now worth $600,000, and it's their entire net worth. Yep. So that's an interesting dichotomy, but I thought it was, I thought it was a good perspective.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that, I agree that it is more difficult in some ways. But one thing that I debate with younger people is you also have access to knowledge and the opportunity to make money in many ways that weren't present when I was alive. We didn't have the internet when I first became an adult. We didn't have Harvard classes for free online. So entrepreneur, you can go on and really study any business and find 10 people that'll share almost everything they do. So yes, the cost is more, but also the opportunity, in my opinion, is greater. And I agree with some things. I was talking about this yesterday with an associate. Like, the average person owns their home 5 to 7 years. So in reality, is a 40-year mortgage really that big of a deal? The truth is yes, you're going to have a little smaller principal pay down, but the likelihood is you're going to move in 5 to 7 years. And on an investment property, I believe in buy and hold. We have companies like BlackRock and these bigger companies coming in. So getting real estate is hard, and everybody in the planet seems to be a real estate investor now. So it is harder because you have a lot of people that don't know what they're doing, and they're actually driving the market up because they're making bad purchases. But I also agree with Trump. I think we should limit affordable housing in companies like BlackRock. I'm a capitalist, but I believe when you hurt more people than you help, I think there needs to be some limitations. So he's talked about limiting their ability to buy in the affordable housing market. I agree with stuff like that.
Yeah.
So those are some things, him paying down the, with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, I think that would be a good way to reduce interest rates in a different way than just relying on the Fed.
Yeah.
That's my position is we should help people get into houses, absolutely, because it's a psychological change. Most of my original time in real estate was with restaurant workers. I was a restaurant manager and I had my real estate license. Taking a server and getting them into their first home, a lot of those people became restaurant owners or entrepreneurs. Psychologically, they changed their entire mindset. A lot of them didn't believe they could ever own a home. When I showed them it was a reality and they bought that home, it changed their entire outlook. And home ownership pushes you to greater things.
I've seen this over and over. You're so right about the psychological impact of it. I've seen this over and over. This is not to be sexist. It's just an observation. And I'm not even knocking females or promoting males. It's just an observation. I can't tell you how many women I've seen in sales that I've coached over the years, and they're 22, 23 years old, and they kick butt in sales for 4 or 5 years. They save up their 50, 60 grand, whatever they need to buy a house. They buy a house, and that is everything to them. That woman wants that nest, that home, and it's very emotional, right? Whereas the man is like, well, we could, continue to rent, et cetera, and I'd be okay with that, but especially the woman, and I'm not judging them for it. In fact, when I coach and mentor young women in sales, I say, hey, I want to help you get your house. I want to help you accomplish that dream, so you do feel safe, so you can build that nest. So you are spot on with that for sure. And you got 3 daughters eventually that you're looking out for too. So you sound like a capitalist, but you also sound like someone with some social ambition too. And it's probably that father in you for sure.
100%. I don't. So I'll give you a little example of that. I had the opportunity to sell a 250 unit package back in 2022. I had venture capitalists flying in from New York, Boston, California. Well, on the top of the piece of paper, I wrote, I grew up on a farm and we put puzzles together in the winter. I also learned how to play chess. I prefer puzzles. When I handed that to these guys who only have played chess their entire life, I said, what does that mean to you? They had no clue. To me, what putting a puzzle together is when you get into any, whether it's business or relationship, you should stand on the same side of the table, you share pieces, and you create a beautiful picture together. There isn't a winner and a loser. You both win because you created something together. So in that deal, it started to fall apart because interest rates went up, and so they started to play chess. Well, we ended up getting $3 million of escrow money from them that they lost, and they tried to legalize it and everything. But I also know how to play chess. So I was 10 steps ahead of their attorneys on everything they tried to do to get that money back. But I told them, the minute you play chess with me, I'm going to play. But then either you lose or I lose. I think that's a bad way to live life. I'd rather put a puzzle together.
I love that. So. And that might go viral as heck, by the way. That was really good. Yes. I've never heard that analogy, or I've never heard that example or no, it's an analogy before. That's really good. Some people do look at business as, when you said chess, some people do look at it as fencing.
Yeah.
It's like, how many times can I stab you versus you stabbing me? No, it's not. It's a partnership, right? And, I do tell that to all of my employees and all my account managers. We have employees in Minnesota, Michigan, New York, Texas. It's not just people here, right? And that is the best analogy I've ever heard, and it's something I'm going to use moving forward, because it isn't about winning or losing. It's about creating that masterpiece together. So for us, I don't just want to do business with somebody for 2 months. I want to be their partner, their marketing partner for the next evolution of their business, or their hiring stage, their growth stage, their capital raising stage. I want to go through all the ups and downs with them. I want to be their partner. So I love that puzzle.
Well, we all know the line, nobody likes to used car salesman, right?
Yep.
And not picking on used car salesmen, but what are they trying to do? They're trying to make the most money on each deal, but rather than building a relationship, and I'm all about relationship building. My average client is 14 years. and even in our industry, that's unheard of. Why? Because they're the priority. My family eats last. That's just the way it is. My family doesn't believe me, my wife and kids aren't always happy, but if we're having a bad month, we're the ones eating ramen, not my clients. Yeah. So.
How do you handle this? I'd be curious to hear your opinion here. So we have, I don't know what the number of clients is exactly, but it's over a couple hundred easily. It's probably 250 clients or so that are actively, engaged with us every single month. And don't get me wrong, there's way more clients than that we've done one-offs for, like, we built a website for. So they're not actively working with us. We've probably worked with, I think the number's 1,300. Okay. Right? Excellent. So, but here's a question I want to ask you. I have an entire team. We have almost 60 people that handle like the accounts and everything, and they're really great people. I mean, look at these guys. They're fantastic, right? A lot of the accounts, it's difficult for me to keep a relationship with all of them because there's such a high volume. And I really do try to keep a relationship with many of them, at least a couple dozen or so. How do you, I'm asking your advice. How do I, as I'm growing this company and we get to 2,000 clients, how can I maintain relationships when there's just not enough time in the world to do it?
At my peak, I probably had about 180 clients, with over 500 properties. Mm-hmm. But I made a point that in the month of June every year, I do a 15-minute call with each of them. It takes quite a bit of time if you add up the math, so that can take weeks when you have a lot of clients. Now, the other thing I think you could
do... It's 40
do,
hours. Yeah, it's a full week.
Exactly.
I just did the math.
And I would dedicate that week because I wanted to check in with them. And also, why was it beneficial that week? Because part of that call is I'm going to say, hey, do you want to buy any more investment property? So of course it's to check in with them because it's easy. This is the biggest mistake I think businesses make. When we hear nothing and there's silence, we think we're doing it right. I actually look at that sometimes as the scariest relationship with a client. We're assuming that they're happy and we don't know. So even that once a year check-in where I'm initiating it, sending them my calendar, they get to choose their 15-minute spot. My first question is, this year, has there been anything that we've done that's kind of sticking in your craw that maybe you want to get off your chest? Sometimes it is. Well, now I've deflated an issue that's growing, and someday something's going to trigger them to make the call and be like, you're fired, or I'm really angry at you, and then that's harder to handle. You always want to meet the problem on your side, right? I always tell my team when a problem exists, we have to lead the communication to completion. So that's what I do, but I think of 2,000 clients, I would hold a Zoom call. And
like a webinar.
And then obviously you can't allow 2,000 people to speak and air their issues, but you could invite them to have a specific email account that it goes to, and then hey, if there's anything that's of concern in our relationship or what you'd like to see or what feedback, so we can grow together, let me know.
That's really good. I think I think I'm going to take your advice on that. I think I could do like a quarterly CEO webinar. And I'm just telling them about the evolution of our company and things that we're doing behind the scenes to make it better for our clients. I feel like I'm in a therapy business coaching session right now. It's really good. So I'm a real estate investor myself. I'm not going to say I'm the most savvy real estate investor. I just buy properties in a desirable area and let them appreciate. But we'll touch on this in a second. I've done several cost segregation studies. I'll get into that in a little bit. Why are you so bullish on West Palm?
I guess I look at Steve and Ross, the Related Group. They rarely miss. I've tracked them for years. They just generally win. So he is extremely bullish, putting up $500 million of his own money to help other people build. Class A property, Wells Fargo just relocated. They're coming to West Palm Beach. The Class A property's filling up, which is unheard of in the recent market. And just look at the cranes. There's constantly 4 or 5 cranes, and West Palm Beach isn't big geographically. I've been here long enough to see the blighted areas, go around Tamarind and some of these areas that for 100 years they've been blighted and had crime issues, and people that are unfortunately destitute and on drugs hanging out. Those areas are having new construction, new builds. Northwood is blowing up. The Ritz-Carlton's going up by Curry Park. I mean, I could go on for 20 minutes. Nora, areas that people wouldn't go into 5 years ago and feel safe are now attracting high-end people. Look at the revamping of City Place. It feels to me more Manhattanish than it does South Florida. Mm-hmm. Why? Because the other thing is why I'm bullish is, I don't know if I can't give her credit with name, but the head of economic development for Palm Beach County she's a beast. I like what she did is she's posting in New York and Times Square and San Francisco and Chicago and Baltimore signs saying it's not you, it's me, and then soliciting people to move their businesses here. No offense to Mondami, and I'm not trying to get political, but she sent him a thank you letter and said, you know what, you just generated probably $100 billion of revenue for West Palm Beach. We're getting calls left and right about how we can work out agreements with cities to build businesses here. The other thing she did, which was brilliant, is when she started 20-some years ago, she looked at the island. Back then, like 5 people that lived on the island had businesses locally. That number, and there was like 178 people she targeted. Like something like 98 of those people now have local businesses because she sat down with them and said, why don't you have your money working right here in your backyard rather than up in New York or Boston? So I just think there's great leadership. I think the city's done a phenomenal job of uplifting everybody. And, probably the big piece is the affordability piece. Yeah. But I even agree with DeSantis. If you look at getting rid of property taxes, he's only doing it for the homestead, which is only, I think, 34% of our tax base. I did a little math. I think if you raise the sales tax to 9 cents rather than 7, it actually replaces all of that revenue.
The $20 billion or
yeah,
whatever.
Exactly.
Be, yeah.
So. And also, I do not like this, but I think we can become the scapegoats, the landlords. Well, maybe they kick a little bit that to us, but we're also 66% of the market of second homes and landlords. Do I want that? But on the flip side, if I live here, which is a motivator to live here and own property, well, I'm going to save all that money on that side. So for me, it's only a break even, but hey, I'll break even to have other people be able to afford to live here. So like you said, your 23-year-old now that doesn't have to pay taxes, they maybe can afford to live here now.
Yeah. So. No, very cool. You're a Floridian through and through. I love it. Yeah. On the it's okay to get political. Yeah. Like I'm very honest about my political views. Yeah. When I was in the year 2019, if you would have asked me what my political stance was, I would have said fiscally conservative, and I would have said socially liberal. Yeah. Right? Because I grew up with a mom on welfare, and I watched my mother use an entitlement program, but I watched her not abuse it. And, we struggled financially for a long time, but she eventually became a nurse and eventually was making, $90,000 a year, bought a house. Yeah. And I ended up going to a decent high school, even though I was still a knucklehead, yeah. Right? But I watched someone socially, use the system the right way. Yep. And so I would have said I'm very moderate, right? But once COVID hit, living in upstate New York, once I saw my rights really being infringed upon, and it felt like, it was chaos, honestly. Right. Yeah. And then, the pressure to get the vaccine and, I had properties, people weren't allowed, people weren't traveling and staying in the properties. It was really hurting my business. But anyway, so as COVID occurred, what it did is and all the decisions I saw over the past few years, it just shot me all the way to the right. Yeah. So I think, I don't know. I love Florida. I think it's the best place in the country to live. And I think we literally live in the best county in Florida. I think we live in the best place in the world. Yeah. I really do.
I agree, and I think the statistics, I was just looking at stats. I mean, Florida is up in West Palm Beach is up in population. Actually, surprisingly, even in the condo market, the inventory from 24 to 25 is lower. The time on market actually went down a little bit, which is surprising because a lot of the country's not seeing that. They're seeing the opposite trends. I agree with you. I mean, Palm Beach County as a whole, and again, I'm bullish very specifically on West Palm, but I love Boynton Beach. Jupiter's home run, Boynton, Boca's always strong. So Palm Beach County, for the most part, just has phenomenal upside, and like you said, I mean, if you love great weather, you like freedoms, you like the beach, where else are you going to go? And obviously internationally, I mean, Florida is the biggest melting pot on the planet, in my opinion, and so you have so many people. A lot of my clients, I have a huge Argentinian client base, Colombian, Brazilian, Dominican Republic. I mean, even I had a guy from Germany come and say, listen, with all of the social programs, he's like, the government's owed me taxes for years, but keep making me pay the taxes. They won't even let me keep a credit. So he's moving all his rental properties to here. Wow. Because he's like, I might not make that greater returns, but at least my money's safe and I'm not getting, taken advantage of, So I agree with you. I mean, I think COVID definitely, I told you a story about 3 residents that refused to take the government money available, and all they had to do was sign a document. And they said, no, we'll just let the landlord suffer. And they ran out the CDC for 18 months and ran up, $30,000 of debt that the landlord was never going to recoup, when they could have gotten like you said, I have no problem with people using tax dollars that are set aside. That's what it's there for. But to say I'm going to screw somebody over intentionally, that kind of jaded me a little bit. So
yeah, just the idea of taxes, like if you just think about it fundamentally and just use common sense, the more you tax somebody, and I'm not an economist, okay? The more you tax somebody, the less purchase ability they have to contribute into the economy. Yeah. It's pretty simple, right? So, like what people don't realize, once you get into business too, and you own a business, man, you get payroll taxes. There's an abundance of taxes, and I just don't understand how some governments, some states, some nations just think that a high tax environment is a good thing. I mean, do I think there should be taxes? Sure. Of course there should be. I don't think we shouldn't have government. I don't think we, shouldn't have some of the social programs. I don't think we shouldn't have police officers. I certainly don't think we should defund them. But low tax environments traditionally do better. I mean, Florida doesn't have a state income tax. They're trying to eliminate property taxes. And the best part about that is the home values are just going to go up. So your net worth is just going to be higher. So just I'm a very intense capitalist when it comes to taxes.
Yeah, and I am too. I don't think taxes, obviously there's a great argument that income taxes really were never actually truly legal to begin with, which we can debate, but I think there's a lot of truth to that. It was a wartime tax. The reality is that it's an oppression, really, if you look at it, because we could go on for an hour of how many different taxes we pay that we don't even think about. We're taxed, and things are taxed multiple times over and over. Well, again, the government doesn't like to look at that, and I believe that government should be very limited. In fact, I'll make this statement. Let's say that we do care about somebody. We want to help them out. There's no human relationship to pay a tax to take care of that person. What's actually more human is to humble yourself to say, I'm going to take a portion of my money and I'm going to go buy food for that person. Now I have a personal relationship with them. I can shake their hand. I know their name. When I pay through a tax, it's cold. It's probably it's impersonal, and generally, if you don't agree with where that's money going, now it's all you've made an enemy of somebody you normally wouldn't. Villages are supposed to take care of each other, not some government in Washington, D.C. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it's like when I see homeless, we were talking about homeless earlier, I get emotional when I see them because I look at them, the ones that don't want to be homeless, not the ones you were talking about that were enjoying it. But it kills me because I think a lot of people look at the homeless and they just see them as a drug addict or they see them as a lowlife. And you know what? That's not always the truth. They just, sometimes their circumstances, and maybe they weren't as mentally tough and maybe they did make mistakes, but they don't need to be treated like a caged animal. It kills me. But I do agree with your premise that I don't want to be told to pay money to you to create programs. I would rather, be social on my own with my own decision making. Right. So I love your take there.
Yeah. Quick thing on the homeless. I actually did this as an experiment. Probably it was 15 years ago. I went and on 95 in Okeechobee, and I was homeless for a day, intentionally. And the biggest takeaway I had is that as cars drove up the on-ramp to get off on Okeechobee, 9 out of 10 people would do anything not to look at you. And so what I took out of that is, like, don't go give a homeless person some money. Actually go and roll down your window and reach out and shake their hand and say, what's your name? Like, if you and I ran into each other at Publix and I was looking at your cart and I wanted to strike a conversation with you, I'd be like, oh, you like, Lucky Charms, awesome. My kids love that stuff. What's your name? And I'm going to shake your hand. They're humans before they're anything. And so humans interact in that fashion. Take the time to pull your car over and go have a conversation about why they're on the side of the road. Don't make those assumptions, because a lot of them have different stories. And sometimes they need more than food. They need brotherhood and sisterhood. And we sometimes forget that. It's easy to give $5 and roll up your air-conditioned window and go on with your life. To me, that's a small price to pay. Actually pull over and go have lunch with them. And maybe you can help them. Maybe they really want to work. Maybe they don't, like you said, I'm a capitalist. I believe that, there's a saying that you don't work, you don't eat in the Bible. I believe in that. But we're to help each other and mentor each other. I look at it like this. This is the way it's supposed to go. Somebody's helping you forward while you're helping them forward. It's a collective chain. So that would be my take on social. But that, if you don't have the personal nature, then, property management, here's a bad statistic. 30% of people in America know their next door neighbor's name. 30%. That's a statistic that's sad. That you live 12 inches away, 6 inches, that's how thick a wall is. You live 6 inches away from somebody for years and you don't know their name. Well, once you know their name, look at any hostage movie you've ever watched. What do they always try and do? Get that person to know something personal about the hostages, and that literally the chances of them killing that person drops by 80%. You know that your neighbor's name is Joe. You're going to look out for Joe when somebody's snooping around his patio. But if you don't know his name is Joe, you'll ignore it and go watch TV. So, that's the human connection that seems to be missing.
Have you, do you like Phil Collins at all, his music?
Phil, yeah.
How can you not?
In the Air Tonight, that was our football song in high school.
Yeah. To this day, football teams are using that music. Well, there's actually a song called Paradise. Yeah. Do you know what song I'm talking about?
If you sang the lyrics, I would.
Think twice, just another day with you and me in paradise.
Yeah. Great song.
Yeah, great song.
Yeah,
it's not about listen to the lyrics when you get home.
Okay.
Because I used to when I would hear it, I would just have fun in the car with my wife, and we live in paradise, we live in Florida. About 2 years ago, I actually listened to the lyrics. Yeah. The lyrics are all about a homeless woman walking in the rain, barefoot, and a sophisticated man treating her like a savage.
Yeah.
And a pathetic human being, doesn't give her any time. She's just simply asking for, do you know where I can find some shelter? It's raining out. And he's so dismissive of her. So the song isn't about living in paradise. It's basically saying that you should be thankful that you're not this woman. Yeah. Whatever your situation is paradise in comparison to her. Yeah. And I got emotional in the car when I heard it. Yeah. But that, my goal, people that are close to me know this. I want to make $1 billion company, and I'm going to do it, because if I can create $1 billion company, the amount of I'll keep a lot of it, right? But the amount of impact I can make with mistreated animals and homelessness is substantial. And what actually drives me and motivates me, I haven't bought the sports car yet. I could care less. Do I have nice trucks and SUVs? Sure. But I don't have the sports car. I don't care about that. That's not what drives me. That's not what motivates me. What really drives me is making an impact. And homelessness is one of them. It's big on my list.
Awesome. No, I think that's what we all should be doing. There's a great, my degree is in psychology. There was a study done, I think it was at Stanford or one of the schools out in California. This was back in the 90s when I read this study. But they took the most severe depressed people and they took them off all their meds. They didn't give them psychotherapy. They told them, go serve. Within probably 6 to 12 weeks, none of them were depressed. there's a great book I'd recommend everybody read. It's by a pastor named Tim Keller. It's called The Freedom of Self-Forgetfulness. It's a little short book. Literally, when you focus on yourself, you'll end up depressed. When you focus on others, you can't be depressed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other day, and I'm not saying this on the podcast to like get kudos. I'm just telling you. But, my wife and I, we've done very well the past few years, especially, right? Yeah. And there's this server who always takes care of us at our favorite restaurant. And we always call him and we say, hey, we're coming in Saturday. You got a spot for us? Gives us Ritz-Carlton level white glove service, Takes care of us like you wouldn't believe. He's funny. We consider him a friend too, right? And he told us, he was struggling financially a little bit. I think it was Halloween night that we were there eating dinner, and he couldn't be home with his 3 boys. He couldn't be home with them because he had to work, because his wife had a procedure coming up, like a medical procedure. It was several $1,000s, and he was working overtime to try to pay this procedure, right? So I saw my wife get emotional about it, like that kind of sucks, right? So I said, well, I'll let you make the decision. You decide how much you want to tip him, right? So I saw my wife do this big, fat, juicy tip. It's, $4,000. I don't remember the number. It was like $4,000, whatever it was. And he saw the tip, and he gets emotional and hugs the both of us, right? When I walked over to the valet with my wife, she was bawling, crying, and I told her, I said, it feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And there's nothing wrong with feeling good. I mean, that's what we should be doing. It's being aware of people around us and realizing that when somebody's struggling, you have time, treasure, and talents. And I think people forget the other two sometimes. We always look to our treasure. But sometimes they just want some time. What do people really want? They want to know they're loved and they matter. That can be done in 5 minutes. You can use your talents to help people. You run a business. I think one of your associates mentioned Patrick Ben David. Well, he hires a lot of people that are kind of marginalized at times. He challenges them in their ideals and says, come work for me and let's see if we can get you to where you want to be. He doesn't always just hire the Harvard graduate, And so, and nothing against Harvard graduates, but I'm just saying, like, we should always be aware of the people around us and where we can step in. And sometimes it's belief, right? I grew up with a very hypercritical father. It took me a long time to have belief in my abilities because I believed his story about me for a while. Okay, well, people that came along in my life, a guy just died, actually, and his name is Ken. He was a owner and manager of a restaurant that I worked in. Kenton let me take over his $5 million kitchen when I'd never worked in a kitchen in my life because he saw something in me I didn't see in myself. I think that's what we can do, especially for other men. A lot of men don't see the talent they really have, and if we can point that out to them and get them to believe in it, they can thrive. So
yeah. No, a lot of cool things. A couple things you said to me are, so I think the reason me and you think alike, I can tell. I also have a degree in psychology.
Okay, yeah.
And I think there's something to people that studied psychology. It's not that psychology taught us something. It's we were hardwired to think about human behavior, why people are the way they are, and we wanted to learn more about it as much as we can. But psychology was the only thing I ever was interested in, because in school I hated class. I didn't even graduate high school on time. I went into the military, and I didn't want to stay in the military. I had a great experience in the military for 4 years, but I knew this wasn't a long-term career. So I was like, crap. I was like, I got to try to go get this college degree. I'm like, but what do I like? For the first time in my life ever, I took Psychology 101 while I was in the military, and it was the very first time I wanted to sit in front of the class, and I was engaged, and I was talking, and I was able to get a psychology degree in 2 years, and I had 3.7 GPA doing 4 years of college in 2 years. And I think that also goes to your point about how if you do something that you like and you're interested in, it's not work.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like a grind doing 24 credit hours a semester, 12 in the winter,
Yeah.
12 in the summer to graduate in 2.5 years. But yeah, our brains are very similar with psychology.
Yeah.
I can tell.
No, I think it's very important, to look at that,
Yeah. So what's so who's if a potential client saw you on this podcast today, who is your target client, and what should they know about you and your business as a property manager?
Okay. So our mission statement's pretty simple. It's we protect the owner while taking care of the tenant, which is the client, by utilizing the lease, Florida Statute 83, and HUD as our kind of Bible or our guidepost. So here's an example that I know most property management companies don't do. My maintenance staff is trained on the lease. They have to test out on it. They're trained on Statute 83. They're trained on fair housing. Well, why? Because the maintenance person has the most interaction with the tenant once they move in. So now my maintenance guy can go in, and let's say the person has a dog and they chewed the blinds. Well, that tenant's probably going to be the squeaky wheel and say, come on, you can give me a few free blind slots. And the answer is no, I can't, because that would not be protecting my owner. If he goes in unequipped and maybe he's even a tenant, well, he's going to go in and probably side with the tenant because the squeaky wheel gets the grease. But now he can say, it is written in your lease in paragraph 4, subsection 2, sentence 1, that if your animal chews up something, you're 100% liable, so I'll fix it at your cost. That's protecting my owner. So one thing I tell my owners is that I'm here to protect you first and foremost. You're 1.0, and look at it this way. An owner is a constant. If I do a great job for an investor, you're an investor. So if I rent your property and I can beat the market by a little bit in vacancy, if I, get good tenants and they pay consistently and you're getting a paycheck, what's the likelihood of you selling that property or terminating me? So you're the constant. A tenant is a variable. By default, a tenant at most is probably going to live in a property 3 years based on statistics. I have to put my focus on the constant to be successful in business. It doesn't mean I don't care about the tenant. They're the client. But I have to get that relationship to work in that capacity. So I'm going to protect you. And another area that I think I'm phenomenal in protection is I understand the law. I would say that I understand it better than most attorneys because this is my craft. I read it, I study it, I keep up on the statutes. I'm always engaging. I meet with my attorneys every year to look at what we need to change, improve upon. So when I get those calls from the tenant that they're like, well, the unit has mold and my kid has asthma, and that's a real life thing that happens. They're trying to exaggerate some truths. That doesn't raise my blood pressure. I go out and I tell them, I'm going to try and prove you right. So I'm going to go through the testing. I'm going to look at everything. But I know this, 99% of all mold in Florida is caused by the atmosphere, not running your AC, keeping your patio door open when you run your AC. A lot of people don't know these things. The tenant causes the mold 99% of the time. But most property managers are terrified of the tenants. I'm not terrified of attorneys. I'm not terrified of tenants. I'm not terrified of landlords. I'm the professional. So when you come to me, I look at it as like you're coming into a neurosurgeon's office. If you're telling me you saw it on Google, I'll consider it as long as it makes sense. But I don't care what ChatGPT says. Sometimes it gets a lot of things wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
So
what so like you said, no, you don't do any short-term rentals. That's too much of a headache.
Yeah, I focus on condos, like you said, and why? Because it gives me the opportunity to have 5-star maintenance. Tenants' number one complaint is slow or ineffective or incomplete maintenance. So why would I focus on anything else when it comes to the client?
Interesting. Okay.
And for the owner, I hold my owners accountable. It's really easy. How you gave the unit is how it must stay the entire time unless the tenant was the one that changed it. So, I'll have owners do this. They have a beautiful double-sided fridge with an ice maker. The fridge breaks and they want me to put in a college-sized fridge. And I'm like, we don't do that here.
Yeah.
And if they push on, I'll say, well, that's fine. Now I'm going to go ask the tenant how much monthly that fridge is worth to them because we're going to reduce the rent by that much.
Yeah.
I won't work with an owner like that. Clean, functional property the entire time they live there. I don't want to have my AC out in the middle of July, so we do some things that are unique. We keep 10 temp ACs in our shop. If your AC goes out and our technician can't get there the same day to fix it, you're going to get a temp AC until that's fixed.
Oh, cool.
Why? Because I don't want to sweat all night, and so I'm not going to make you sweat. Just little things like that I think show a different level of care. And like I tell the owners, that tenant is your client. You're my main client. But if you don't think, we're not in some feudal system in the 1500s where, the landlord rides out and beats you about the head and takes a sack of money from you. Those days are gone. It's like owning a restaurant or anything. You walk in and the bathroom's dirty. Well, you got to wonder what the kitchen looks like. So we can't rent it. I had an owner once that said, don't fix anything because the tenants just trash it. And I said, well, you know what? When they walk into your unit and they go, the owner doesn't care about the property, why should I? That's what you get. Like attracts like. When I rent a beautiful, clean property that's functional, I get a clean, functional tenant.
Yeah.
When I rent a broken down, thing with blood stains on the carpet from the previous person, they're going to trash that place. Why? Because, like I said, you didn't care about it. Why should they?
What percentage of tenants are? Because I used to own Airbnbs, and we basically just converted them to long-term renters, because of the headache. And I got some wild stories I can tell you. I'll tell a couple here in a minute. But what percentage of long-term renters end up being a nightmare with?
We probably average 2 evictions a year.
Okay.
So what I'd also say about that is what a lot of property management companies do, or especially owners that manage themselves, is they believe that giving time to somebody is honorable or good. I look at it completely in the opposite fashion. We don't have a grace period. So rent is due and payable on the 1st, and at midnight on the 1st, you're late. On the 2nd, your 3-day notice, my team's going to be out there in the morning. You're going to have a 3-day notice which says pay or quit. You now have 3 days to pay or quit. On the day after that expires, we are absolutely going to send that file to our attorney. Our attorney is going to file an eviction. That's going to get you about another $600 in fees. What I've found is those tenants catch up. 2 things. Just like children, tenants will test you to see if you're serious. So when they see that you gave the notice on the 2nd, the attorney letter's on their door, they're going to court and they're getting evicted, they realize, oh, this isn't a joke. This is a relationship of business. Number 2, when can I catch up on my debt? When it's $4,000 or $1,200? So I think giving people time to go further in debt is actually a disservice to them.
Yeah.
Also, here's the truth. 98 to 99% of my tenants pay rent. They have deaths, they have lost jobs, they have broken cars. I'm trying to always get the 1 or 2% to join the 99. I actually send a message of belief, not of condemnation. So I'm more like a coach, slap them on the ass and say, get in the game and get on the right side of the field. Yeah. You've always been on the losing team. It's time to join the winners, and the winners have a different approach to this. When their mother passes away, they only take 3 days off. They don't take 3 months off. We have to grieve but still go to work. These are real life stories that I'm using. So it's like, so that's the way I do it, and so that's why I believe we have a very low eviction rate, because it's mentorship. I say this not derogatorily, but there's a small handful of leaders in the world, and there's a lot of people that follow a leader. Well, as a management company owner, I'm a leader. My tenants will follow whatever I allow them to do. My owners will do the same thing. So wherever my leadership allows, they're going to gravitate to the mean. So that's how I approach it.
You run a tight ship. I love it. So if I was a real estate investor, and here's my advice to real estate investors, that if they hear this, I would definitely work with a guy like you, and I would definitely do long-term renters. Because obviously you run a tight ship, no nonsense. You're obviously very experienced. So definitely, if you're an investor, hire this guy for sure. If you're an investor, definitely hire this guy. I want to tell you a couple quick short rental stories, right? Short-term rental stories. So we built up this entire Airbnb business down here, and this was in 2020, 21, and then a little bit of 22. And the very first property I got in Lake Worth, this property, I think it was $300 or $400 a night. during peak season. It wasn't like a really expensive property at the time. It was like $400,000. I sold it for $950,000, by the way.
Nice.
I made a nice. I didn't even touch it. It was awesome in about 18 months, right? But there were a few days that people were not booking, right? And there was a little gap there, like a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I had the great idea of, let's just lower the price for a few days. And I lowered the price to $100 a day, and it instantly got rented. That's like Red Roof Inn pricing, okay? So next thing I know, man, we have a full-out drug operation in this freaking house. And, suspicious people are coming in and out of the house, driving in and out of the driveway. And I kid you not, we eventually told them, that they had to, it was 10 a.m. on a Thursday and that they had to go. Man, we walked in there. We just walked in at like 11 a.m. or whatever it was, said, you guys have to leave. We have to clean for the next guest. There was just like 4 or 5 just people all on drugs, all whacked out, and it was crazy. I swear on my life, for the next 6 months, the cleaners kept finding like a little baggie of drugs or something weird in some other random crevice of the house. Probably not the next 6 months, but that also kind of goes to show you, you get what you pay for, meaning whatever you set your prices at, that's what you're going to attract in terms of your customer base, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We had some another crazy story, and this is why I wouldn't do short term, because you're just always playing with fire. There was a bunch of college kids that came down in March, and they're on spring break, and we literally saw them on camera. There's no way to prevent this. They were jumping off of our roof into the pool. That's a recipe for death. Yeah. That's a recipe for, who knows.
And you're getting sued.
And I'm exactly. Yeah, exactly. Right. I think Airbnb has a $1 million liability policy, whatever it is. But yeah, no, I definitely wouldn't do. Definitely, investors do not do short-term rental. Short-term, the Airbnb market is not what it was several years ago. You're also playing with fire. Hire a guy like Harlan, get into the long-term game, and hire someone like him that is very experienced. Take a look in that camera. If someone wants to get in touch with you, if they're an investor looking to, potentially do some business with you, where can they find you?
Perfect. So our website is westpalmbeachpropertymanagement.com. Our office number is 561-440-7368. We'd love to talk to you, and we work with like-minded people. So that's really our goal, is to work with clients that resonate with our mission statement. And I think our longevity speaks for itself. 14-year on average client retention, which is unheard of even in our market. So we really hone in on what's best for you. So.
Real estate investors, get in touch with Harlan. He's going to treat you good. Trust me, I've dealt with property managers, and there's levels to that game, and he's at the top of the game. I could tell by his professionalism and experience. So thanks again for tuning in to the Gold Coast Podcast. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe, share it with someone who you think finds this information useful. See you again.